You're listening to Deliberate Living, a podcast that inspires, empowers, and encourages listeners to live life more authentically. My name is Holly Priestley, and I'm a full-time nomad and writer who has been living in my 1997 Ford van since January 1st of 2019. I travel the United States with my dog, learning how to live with more authenticity. I explore different ways people choose to ditch the prescribed life we've all been sold and live on their terms, finding freedom and happiness however they choose. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Deliberate Living podcast. I am your host, Holly Priestley, and this episode is part 2 of who knows how many listener Q&A episodes. So I put out the call on Instagram the other day for listener questions that I could answer in this week's podcast, and I got a bunch of really good questions. Some of them do lend themselves to a lot more explanation than I'm going to go into here today. So be on the lookout for more episodes in the future, specifically about traveling on the road full-time with a dog, and then also a little bit more on how to cut through the fear of having a miserable and yet stable job in order to hit the road. Those questions in particular, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about, but I do think that they deserve their own episodes later on. All right, so the first question we're going to tackle today is that question of how do I cut through the fear of having a miserable job, but that is still stable in order to hit the road. And this one is incredibly common, and I do try to address it with every guest that I have on. Not every guest that I have on is a road lifer, a vanner, an RVer, a traveler, or a nomad. I do have a number of guests who are living deliberately alternative lifestyles that don't involve being nomadic, but I think that this question is relevant regardless because, whether the end of the question is, how do I cut through the fear of, having a stable job that I hate so I can hit the road? You can change so I can hit the road into so I can start a business, or so I can start a family, or so I can adopt a dog, or so I can travel to the other side of the world, or anything else at all you want to do there. So I'm going to answer this question with my own personal answer, and then I am going to pull from previous episodes of the Deliberate Living show and give you a rundown of what some of my other guests have said pertaining to this particular fear. So my answer is to jump and build your wings on the way down. Leave the job and figure it out. The worst thing that can happen is that you're going to need to stop somewhere on the road and get another job for a short period of time. I think that you need to give yourself the chance that you need in order to be successful doing the remote work or building the business that you want or doing seasonal jobs or whatever it is that you want most to do. I think if you keep waiting until you're ready, you're never going to get there. My biggest piece of advice would be to just give it a shot. What is the worst thing that can happen, right? The worst thing that can happen is that it didn't quite work out the way you planned, and now you have to be stationary for a little bit and save up a little bit more money or get a job that you weren't expecting to get or something of that nature. So Naomi and Dustin, recent podcast guests, they run the platform Irie to Aurora, as well as Diversify Vanlife and Vanners at the Intersections, or Vanlifers at the Intersections, or Vanlife at the Intersections. It's one of those podcasts. I'll link to it below. The advice that they give is to hurry up and get out. That was from Naomi. And Dustin says that if you have that nagging feeling that something isn't working, don't stick to what you're doing just because everyone else says it's the best thing to do or it's what you're supposed to be doing. If you feel like it's not working for you, you owe it to yourself to find something that does work. So what they did when they moved onto the road was they basically gave themselves a short timeline, a 3 or 4 month runway, and they were like, all right, we're going to be on the road by X day, and then they made it happen. And so from their advice, I would say, quickly make it happen and then take the time to slow down and figure it out. Hillary Bird runs a platform called Green Van Go, and she wants others to more fully trust in themselves. Taking the leap into any kind of new lifestyle or venture is really scary and unnerving, but if you don't pursue your curiosities and interests, you'll forever wonder what you missed out on. So if you can't set sail tomorrow, keep saving money, keep making moves towards your goals. Don't let fear, whether that be yours or somebody else's, stop you from hitting the road. Amber Owens of Aimless Amber is also a full believer in the don't wait until you're ready mindset. You're never going to be fully financially, logistically, mentally, emotionally, or in any other way ready. And so changing your lifestyle is nerve-wracking, whether you want to backpack the world like she did, or move into a van like she did, or move to a new city like she did. Diving into the unknown is terrifying, but often it's so totally worth it. Amber says that when you're scared and you still push through that and allow yourself to do these things, especially on your own, she feels like you really just learn so much more about yourself, and you allow yourself to be in an environment that you have never been before. Amber believes that you won't grow if you never experience new things, and I fully agree with her. Staying in your comfort zone won't allow you to get to know yourself and pursue your fully authentic life in any way. Candace Love's biggest piece of advice would be to do your own research. And when you're doing the research, don't just look into the things that make you feel good. She wants anyone considering changing their lifestyle to do honest research and consider what might be best for you and not necessarily best for someone else or best for your Instagram feed. The reality behind any pretty picture that you see online is usually years of work, miles of frustration, and ample time setting the scene. Living in a van isn't as glamorous as it looks online, and you need to research the reality before you jump to escape your current situation. Your reality and your needs and your preferences are going to differ from what other people living the lifestyle that you want to live are. You need to learn the ins and the outs and what would be appropriate for you and what you are looking for. If you only look for the great things, once you get into this lifestyle and you get on the road and you live in a van, reality will hit, and it's going to be like, damn, they didn't show this on Instagram. They didn't show me that I was going to have to figure out how to poop in the woods or in the van. They didn't show me how showering once a week actually looks or smells. The biggest component to any kind of lifestyle change, especially getting on the road, is being honest with yourself about what you need and what you don't need. And this is true when it comes to your van build out, your travel plans, your income, or anything else. Like, you have to do what's best for you, and you have to be honest about what you personally need. Stephanie Sampson of the Vanlife Chronicles also agrees that research is incredibly important. Be excited. Absolutely. Be thrilled about the lifestyle change that you're making, but do your research. Steph feels like she may have jumped the gun on buying the right rig for her needs because she didn't do enough research. If you're able to go to a van gathering once those start happening up again, hopefully in 2021, fingers crossed, Steph recommends that you go to a van gathering. You talk to people who are already living the lifestyle. You test drive multiple vans to get a feel for how each one drives and what it feels like to be in the living space of different sizes and shapes and all of that of different vehicles. Steph bought a low roof van, a pretty small little cargo van that she built out 3 or 4 times, and she just recently upgraded to a van that she could stand in, a taller rig, and she's now building that one out. But she thinks that if she had done the research ahead of time, she would have ended up with a taller van at the beginning and wouldn't have necessarily needed to rebuild her rig 4 times before ultimately buying a bigger van anyway. So you might not need the tall van like Steph did, but it's worth putting yourself in a tall van, in a short van, in a Class B, in a sedan, in an RV, etc., to see how it all feels for you and to really take into consideration your lifestyle needs. Emily Martin of Positively Pets also suggests making out a plan, but being flexible to that plan. Be smart, do some work ahead of time, do your research, etc., but also just go for it. Don't get lost in the planning phase of things. Maybe start small, start it as like a side gig or a weekend gig or something like that. If it doesn't work for you, you can pivot things as you move along. But if you take small steps along the way and you try to incorporate it into your lifestyle in small ways, you can fix it before it's something that's massive. Emily says that you might have to do some things that you don't want to do in order to get where you want to go, and those sacrifices are well worth it and they pay out in the long run. Jake Jorgevin suggests that you just assume you're going to be successful. He says that when you go into something, you're like, this is going to work, and I'm going to make this work because I'm committed to making it work, and it may not look like how I think it's going to look right now, but if you commit to it and you say, I'm going to figure it out regardless, that commitment will pull yourself through a lot of the stress and the road bumps that come along the way. Things are never going to work out exactly as you plan them, and so you need to be accepting of the fact that things will shift and evolve during the process, but committing to figuring it out no matter what is what's going to take your life to the next level. Commit to the thing you want to do, be flexible as to how you'll get there. Yulia Konovnitsina of Many Soulful Miles suggests taking it one step at a time. Yulia's big problem with especially American culture is that everybody in our society tells you to think big, and she hates that, and I agree with her. We hate that the notion of thinking big because that can be really overwhelming, and you can't necessarily break that down into like micro elements. Instead of thinking big, Yulia suggests that you think small. What can you do today? Even if it's just like a 5-minute action that will get you closer to your goal. So this could be something like cleaning out your closet, or cleaning out your junk drawer, or, getting a tune-up on your car, or, anything like that. Like some of those small, like 5-minute steps, do them every single day. And you can break down that huge thinking big, living on the road full time for years with my dog. That in and of itself is a really overwhelming prospect. If you break it down into small steps that you take every day, you'll be able to like wade your way into the dream life that you want. So these are just some of the pieces of advice that previous podcast guests have given on this particular question. If you have additional advice that you want to leave for anyone listening or watching or reading, please leave that in the comments and I will incorporate it into a future show. The next few questions that came up are specifically about finding camping and parking. And the first of those is, how do you select your next location to camp out? Do you prefer parking and staying in areas where you're less visible or noticed? And to answer the second question first, yes, I do most often prefer to have privacy and solitude. I don't love having neighbors unless I'm deliberately caravanning with someone, of course. And I like to be able to have plenty of space to let the dog out off leash and allow both of us to kind of wander and spread out. For the first question, picking a place to camp can be a real challenge. It's more like a combination of art and science versus one or the other. And ultimately, the selection process comes down to what my needs are for that or the next day, basically. I use a variety of resources to find suitable camping spots before I drive down some random road in the middle of the wilderness that I'm not sure I'm supposed to be on. I want to scope out the area online before I get there to minimize stress and getting lost or going on roads that my rig really has no business being on. And so I use a collection of apps and websites like iOverlander, Google Maps, freecampsites.net, FreeRoam, Onyx, etc. And I'll have links to all of those in the show notes and on the blog as well. And once I figure out a couple of spots from there based on like where I'm going and what I need to do the next few days, I triangulate which spots are most likely going to be a fit for my needs. And my needs change, right? Sometimes I need a ton of cell service, enough to do a Zoom call or 6. Sometimes I need more solar. Sometimes I need a lot of space from my neighbors. Other times I really need to have a close proximity to a certain place that I need or want to go the next day. Or I need the ability to park multiple rigs if I'm caravanning, or I need water access or something to that effect. My needs change almost daily based on what appointments I have, what work I have, what mood I'm in, what season it is. And so I never look for exactly the same criteria from any one camp spot, which is why I use multiple resources to try and figure out what each spot might have to offer me. And I would definitely recommend having a couple of different places on your radar on any given day so that if the first place you go doesn't work, has somebody in it, or has a road closed, or something of that nature, you have other options already sourced in the back of your mind to go to next. Question number 3 was whether or not I target national or state forest lands, BLM, Bureau of Land Management lands, etc., over state parks and campgrounds. And the short answer to that is yes, absolutely. The longer answer is that, I prefer to stay in national forests, state forests, BLM, state trust, etc. Areas for a few reasons. Number one is that the chances that I can spread out from any other campers is generally greater in those areas. They're less crowded, less popular. I can get the space that I need. And point 2 is kind of an addition to that. Like, there's more to explore in those areas, and generally they're more dog friendly. National parks, state parks, properties like that, public lands like that, are often more human friendly, but not so dog friendly. Like, most of the trails in national parks I can't take her on, so she has to stay in the rig, and this doesn't always work for us, depending on the weather or the day, her energy levels, etc. So I like staying in areas where she's actually able to enjoy the activities with me. The third main reason for this is that I'm really frugal, and I don't like paying for camping. I have the ability to hook up to electricity, but I don't need to. I don't need to hook up to water. I don't need a picnic table. I don't need access to a pit toilet or like anything else I would really have to pay for. So there's no real benefit to me staying in a campground or in a state park or a national park. Your neighbors are really close, and you have a bunch of amenities that I don't really need. So I stay on free lands for those reasons. And to date, I have paid exactly $7 one time to camp near a climbing area, and it was fully worth it. It wasn't crowded, I just wanted to be that much closer to it. And that's not to say that like paying for campgrounds or going to state parks or national parks is a bad idea. It's just, for me personally, I don't need them, so I don't go. The next question is, how long do you stay at the same spot, or what is your duration in a given area before moving on? And the unsatisfying answer to this question is that it depends. The first year I was on the road, 2019, I traveled a lot more frequently and over longer distances than I have this year. I would often only stay at a place for a night or two, rarely more than that. And this is actually what a lot of nomads do the first year or so of their travels. Like, we're so excited with our newfound freedom that we want to go everywhere and see everything and take advantage of the new lifestyle. And like, it was really good, and I had a ton of fun. I saw so many things. I made a million memories, and I kind of built up a routine for myself. And this was just based on like my needs, work-wise and energy-wise. I would generally like wake up and work for a few hours in whatever area I had camped in the night before, and then I would drive whatever driving I was doing that day, like whether it was 20 minutes or 4 hours. I do the driving, and then I do a little bit more exploring in the new area before I went to bed and started over and did it all again the next day. This year I have embraced a lot more slow travel, and I've talked about this before. Part of it is logistics and circumstance. The pandemic obviously slowed me down quite a bit. My partner has a stationary seasonal job, which meant that, the combination of the two, I have stayed in the van a little bit more stationary, a little bit more slow for longer stretches this year than last year. As a result, I've spent a lot less on gas, and I've really like sunk into the spot that I camped, and I've like soaked up a place before I've moved on. As I said before, there's no right or wrong way to travel. Some months I travel a lot. Some weeks I travel a lot. I see a lot of things. I see a lot of people. I have places to go, and I will just drive for like 8 to 12 hours a day. This is not what I prefer because my driving situation is not very ergonomic, and my dog doesn't love it either. So I try to do the slower travel for a lot of reasons now, but there's no right or wrong way to do it. And it just depends on what's going on in life. What I need from that location, what's going on with the weather, etc. The next listener question is whether I have ever felt unsafe in a chosen area? And if so, why? And yes, I have. I felt unsafe once or twice. Luckily, not very frequently. It doesn't happen very often, but sometimes I will drive into a spot and get a really uneasy feeling and then drive away because I trust my gut. There isn't always something I can pinpoint as to why a place feels unsafe. Something in my gut just says, keep moving on. And so I do. Sometimes I have decided to move based on other campers in the area, whether they are just, crowding in there and they look like they're going to be a loud all night kind of party crowd when I just want to sleep, or there's like 4, 5, 6, 10 dogs off leash running around. I can't let my dog out in that situation. She will be really stressed out and loud. And so we can't really be peaceful in that situation. So those times I do generally try to move either a little bit farther away or maybe just to a whole new place. Overall, I've always felt safe in the van and on the road. I love that I have easy access to my cab. I can just walk on through those curtains and I'm in the driver's seat. I leave my cab, my keys in an easily accessible place, and I can park and like crawl in bed or like wake up and drive without having to exit the vehicle, which I like. And yeah, I try to leave everything like easy and ready to go so that if I have to make a quick break for it, I can. But overall, I felt pretty safe. And you just hone your instincts and hone your preferences and what you would like out of a camp spot. The next listener question is, what are some of the specific things I miss about stationary living? And there are a few things, but honestly, it's not a whole ton. I miss having a bathtub with like hot running water anytime I want. And I do miss having all of my plants. I had a ton of plants in my last apartment. It was kind of like a little jungle, and I was emotionally attached to them. I can get bathtub benefits from hot springs when I run across them on the road, and I do spend a lot of time in nature, so I'm surrounded by plants all the time. But when I'm stationary again, I will definitely have a luxurious bathtub situation and a whole jungle inside the house as well. I know some vanners do have plants in their rigs, but mine doesn't temperature control very well with all these windows and things, so they would all die immediately, and I just spare myself the heartbreak by not having them. The next listener question we have is asking for any pro tips on traveling with a pooch. And like I said at the beginning of this episode, this one will probably get its own episode before too long because I get this question a lot. So look for that to come out in a few weeks. Basic rules of thumb for traveling with a dog is be aware of the temperature inside and outside the van at all times. Get yourself a no-spill water bowl and keep it filled up at all times. And then try to see your adventure through your dog's eyes as often as you can, because it'll change your entire worldview. My dog is definitely a very good van dog, a very good road dog, and I got really, really lucky with that. She has always enjoyed car rides, and she loves being with me, and so since we live in the van, she's with me 24 hours a day. And we're always going someplace fun, and she's in nature more, and she gets to have more adventures and more exercise. But she's a senior dog. She's 12, and she doesn't have all of the energy of a puppy. She's not too big. She's only about 40 pounds. So she's a perfect size for living in a van, and perfect energy level for living in a van. And she's really good for me to have in the van because sometimes if I'm feeling particularly sedentary and just like a lump, she needs to go for a walk and then we both go for a walk and then I feel better. Or, I'll be tired after a full day of driving and she'll be excited to go explore. And so we'll go explore and that'll change my whole mood. So yeah, being aware of temperatures at all times. Get yourself a good vent fan, maybe one that has a thermostat on it that will automatically turn on when it gets too hot. I can link to the one I have. It's a Max Air. You got to keep your dog like healthy and safe. So ventilation, some kind of temperature control, and that no spill water bowl will definitely come in handy. The final question for this rendition of listener Q&A is, what are some of the craziest mechanical fixes you've done on the road? And to start, I'm not a mechanic, and I've gotten pretty lucky with my emergency road problems in that there haven't been very many. The van has definitely gone to the mechanic a time or 6 and gotten a lot of love. But as far as the things I've fixed myself, often with the help of my dad, brother, van friend, etc., it's been fairly minimal, and I'm grateful for that. The most recent one was that I had a super duper duper flat tire on a back mountain road with no service, and I hadn't actually changed a tire before, and I didn't, I knew how, but I didn't know how because I hadn't actually done it before, and I didn't know how to get my spare tire off of the bottom of my rig. So I was figuring it out. It was taking a little longer than I think maybe my mom wanted it to take. She happened to be with me on this particular adventure. And yeah, that was a fun adventure for sure. I posted about it on my Instagram stories, and you can find that in the Vancidence highlight. I've also replaced my isolator twice. My windshield wiper module broke, and I had to replace that as well. I recently did a master cylinder replacement with the help of my dad. My shift knob and cable replacement happened earlier this summer, and my younger brother helped me with that. And then also the shift knob screw underneath the van was really loose and super, super tricky to get to and hard to screw back in. My brother helped me with that as well. Super grateful for him. Also this summer, I recently replaced my 2 old deep cycle house batteries with 1 new lithium battery, and I want to thank my friends Cole and Ian for that. And yeah, a lot of random bits and bobs. Nothing terribly crazy. I haven't had to replace the engine or do anything terribly scary, which is good because, again, I'm not a mechanic. I currently know a lot more about cars than I've ever known before, but I still know so little about how they actually work. Yeah, I've definitely gotten lucky with my van, and that was something that I specifically looked for when I was buying the van. I've said it in previous episodes, I'll say it again. If you're looking to buy a used rig, I don't care who it's from, take it to a mechanic for a pre-purchase checkup and make sure that you're not getting yourself a lemon. So that just about wraps up this episode of Listener Q&A, and I want to encourage you to, again, submit any other pieces of advice that I missed or any questions that you have for a future Listener Q&A episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Deliberate Living podcast. There are a number of ways you can support the show if you are so inclined. 5-star reviews absolutely help. Sharing your favorite episodes with people you know need to hear them is a great help as well. And I have set up a Venmo and a PayPal to help offset some of the costs of producing the podcast. And those are linked in the show notes or in my bio on Instagram. So I hope you guys are having an awesome day, and tune in next week for another excellent episode. Thanks. Bye. We've reached the end of this episode of Deliberate Living. You can find the show notes and everything we referenced over on my website, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on YouTube, or sign up for email updates every time something new is published. I'll see you next time on Deliberate Living, and until then, keep your life on the DL too.